In this video, I'm going to talk about how to write a lab report. And the format that I'm going to give you is going to be one that will be acceptable in my class, and I think it'll be acceptable in most college formats as well. And not only am I going to tell you how to write one, but I'm actually going to write one during the video itself. So let's get started. So very briefly, the sections that you're going to need to write a physics lab report are the abstract, which is just kind of a summary of what you did, so people can read one quick paragraph and get an idea of what the lab's about. The theory and procedure, which tells them how to duplicate the lab if they wanted to do it themselves and see if they get the same results. Data and analysis, which shows what you got, what your results were after you executed the lab, how you got those results. And then conclusion, which is your interpretation of why you think those results matter and what they mean. And also you have to discuss error. You have to discuss how trustworthy you think your results are. Now on the lab report, you're going to have everything in this order: abstract, theory, procedure, data analysis, and conclusion. But I actually recommend that you write the lab in this order. Start with the data, then write a conclusion on the data that you just did, and then do these easy sections at the beginning, actually at the end. So you kind of write it a little bit backwards. So really quickly, here's an example of some data from a lab you could do. This is where you're looking at how many words there are in a document versus how much time the person has spent typing. And this is really good data. I've got a graph here showing that stuff. And we've pretty much analyzed it as much as we can before going toward writing the lab report, because we've got everything in a graph, and we have a line of fit showing what's going on, and we've got the equation for that line of fit. So you're pretty much done with the data, and you're ready to start tossing things into the lab report. So here I have the lab report template from my site, and I'm just going to start filling things in. So first I'm going to take the data that we just did and start copy-pasting it in here. There, so that's done. I've got everything copied and pasted into my data section. We've got the raw data with a title saying that it's table 1, and we've got the graph, and we say that that is figure 1. The next thing that you have to do is state a mathematical model for that graph. So I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to turn it into actual scientific stuff, because right now we've just got y's and x's. I want to make an equation that actually says something, so let me do that. So down here at the bottom, I did an analysis really fast of the graph, and I wrote this general equation, which says the amount of words in the document, in words, is equal to 50 words per minute, because that's your slope here. You had a slope of 50. It means that every minute you typed 50 words, times the amount of time that goes by in minutes, plus 201 words. And that's the equation that tells you what in the world this graph means. So next, we need to write the conclusion. Next up, you'll want to write your conclusion. This is a sample conclusion that I just typed based on the fake lab that we just had. And the main things that you want is, first, you want to list what your results were, so I did right here, and then immediately say if those results seem reasonable or not, if you think something went wrong or if you think the results make sense. And in the conclusion next, you're just going to talk about what those results were, and particularly, what does the slope mean and what does the intercept mean? You got to go from the graph to the actual physical significance in the world of those numbers on the graph. So here I kind of talked about that. And then talk a little bit about maybe if there was any error in the experiment, how you could have improved it, what you think went well, what went wrong. Basically, if someone else were to try to repeat your lab, what could they do differently to get better results than you did? Because science is all about repeating experiments over and over and over again until we know exactly what we want. By the way, you might want to pause this and use this screenshot as a guide for some of the language that you'll want to use in the conclusion. Particularly, notice that I don't use the word I or me anywhere in this. It helps a lot if you start sentences by talking about the actual stuff. So a lot of my sentences begin with the word the, or begin with the word a, or the word this, or another. So make sure your sentences start off by talking about the data and not yourself. It'll make your writing sound a lot stronger. So you don't want to say something like, I noticed in this experiment. That makes the reader think that you're biased. Instead, just state it. State it as if it were true. Another thing in this experiment that happened was blah, 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 blah. It just makes you sound better, and it's the way that the scientific community wants to see things written. No first person allowed. At this point, the lab is actually about 80% done. These two sections are very simple, and they're not worth many points. That's why we saved them for last, since your brain's probably fried by the time you get to this point. So let me type in a sample abstract and a sample procedure. So here's a sample of an abstract and a theory procedure for what is a very simple lab in this case. In the abstract, the idea is it's supposed to be kind of like the back of a novel. This is a paragraph that a person can read to quickly decide whether or not they want to read the rest of your lab, to see if they're interested in what you did and what your results were. It should be no more than 5 sentences. Even for a complicated lab, it should typically be very short. It's just a preview to see if I want to read the rest of this stuff. In the procedure, please don't make it long. You want the procedure to be as short as possible while still giving the person enough information so that they could copy the lab that you just did. And nothing more. If you have a long abstract and a long procedure, that's going to annoy your grader. So really try to keep these short and full of really important stuff. If you can say it all in 3 sentences, then only use 3 sentences. Try to be as brief as you can, but include all the important details. Don't leave out anything that's necessary. Also, the procedure should never be a bullet point list. It should always be written in paragraph form. I see that mistake a lot, so make sure that you do that. And then you're done. An entire lab report written, I think it took me about 20 minutes to get this done. They don't take that long if you know what to do. So to finish up, I'm going to scroll through it really fast, and if you want to pause the video at any time to just kind of see a sample of a particular section, then you can feel free to do that. The majority of the grade is based on the data and the analysis and the conclusion. The conclusion as a teacher is what I really look closely at. The conclusion is what tells me, what did you learn from doing this lab? This is the part that I'm going to base the vast majority of the grade on, because that's what I really care about. The other stuff is just going through the motions so that a reader can comfortably see what you did. But the conclusion is what tells me whether or not you gained physics knowledge by doing this experiment. So really try to pour most of your time into the conclusion and try to write things that are really insightful and interesting, but make sure that the data backs up what you say. Don't give me opinions in the conclusion. Give me stuff. Tell me the data that allows you to make that conclusion. Don't just make those conclusions out of thin air. That's very important. Good luck and enjoy writing your first lab.